Millionaire's secret past revealed by Triplets. In a shelter, Victor Harrington appears to have everything. At 47, he's the founder and CEO of Pinnacle Investments, ranked among Boston's most eligible bachelors and renowned for his uncanny ability to transform struggling companies into profitable ventures. His penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, collection of rare art, and reputation as a calculating businessman have made him both admired and feared in financial circles. What no one knows is that Victor Harrington was born Vincent Haddad, the son of Lebanese immigrants who operated a small grocery store in a working-class Detroit neighborhood. 25 years ago, Vincent disappeared after a devastating fire claimed his family's store and his parents' lives. He emerged on the East Coast with a new name, new accent, and new history. A reinvention so complete that not even his closest business associates know the truth. Victor has spent decades burying his past and cultivating his current identity. But his carefully constructed life begins to unravel when his company launches a corporate social responsibility initiative focused on children in foster care. During what should have been a routine press event at Hope Haven Children's Center, Victor comes face to face with 12-year-old triplets whose striking amber eyes and distinctive facial features mirror his own. When one of the triplets addresses him by his birth name, Victor is confronted with a secret he never knew existed. A brief relationship before he fled Detroit resulted in 3 children he never knew he had. As Victor investigates the triplets' background with the reluctant help of their guardian social worker, Isabel Chen, he is forced to confront not only his abandoned identity, but also the circumstances surrounding the fire that destroyed his family's store. What begins as an attempt to control a potentially reputation-damaging situation evolves into an unexpected journey of redemption, as Victor discovers that reclaiming his past might be the only way to secure his future. The children at Hope Haven Children's Center had been rehearsing their thank you speeches for weeks. It wasn't every day that a billionaire investor donated $1 million to expand their facilities, and the staff wanted everything to be perfect. For Victor Harrington's visit, remember, best behavior, Catherine Watson, the center's director, reminded the assembled children as they lined up in the newly renovated recreation room. Mr. Harrington's generous donation means we'll be able to help twice as many children next year. In the back row, 12-year-old Zara Haddad rolled her eyes at her brothers, Zayn and Zachariah. The triplets had perfected their silent communication years ago, a necessity for survival as they moved through the foster care system. Zara's eye roll conveyed exactly what she thought about being paraded in front of a rich man seeking good publicity. "He's here," Catherine announced, smoothing her skirt nervously. "Places, everyone." The double doors opened, and a phalanx of people in expensive suits entered, with cameras and journalists following behind. In the center walked Victor Harrington, his commanding presence and tailored Italian suit setting him apart even in this group of well-dressed executives. At 47, Victor conveyed power and control in every movement. His dark hair was perfectly styled, with distinguished silver at the temples. His features were sharp and defined, giving him a perpetually serious expression that softened only rarely, mostly for calculated effect during business negotiations. "Welcome to Hope Haven, Mr. Harrington," Catherine said, stepping forward to shake his hand. "We cannot express enough gratitude for your foundation's support." Victor smiled his public smile, warm but efficiently brief. "Pinnacle Investments believes in creating opportunity. These children deserve every chance to succeed." The rehearsed statement was one of many he'd practiced with his PR team. Victor had not initially been enthusiastic about this particular charitable initiative, but his marketing department had insisted that supporting children's causes would soften his rather intimidating public image. The personal appearance had been scheduled for exactly 45 minutes, long enough for photographs and sound bites, short enough to be back at the office for an important conference call. As the cameras flashed, Victor moved through the room, shaking hands with staff and offering practiced words of encouragement to the children. He was halfway through the event when he reached the back row and came face to face with the triplets. The recognition was instant and visceral. 3 pairs of amber eyes, identical to each other and eerily similar to his own, stared back at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. The children shared distinctive features that Victor saw in his own mirror every morning. High cheekbones, a particular arch to their eyebrows, the same slight cleft in their chins. Victor faltered mid-sentence, something that hadn't happened during a public appearance in over a decade. The resemblance was not merely striking, it was familial. "Mr. Harrington?" Catherine prompted, concerned by his sudden silence. But Victor's attention remained fixed on the triplets, particularly the girl, who was studying him with an intensity that felt like recognition. "Have we met before?" he asked, the question slipping out before he could apply his usual filters. The girl, Zara, according to the name tag on her shirt, tilted her head slightly. "Not exactly," she replied, "but I know who you are." "I should hope so." Victor recovered smoothly, attempting to regain his composure. "My photo was on all the promotional materials for today's event." "That's not what she means," one of the boys said quietly. His name tag read, "Zachariah." "She means we know you're Vincent Haddad from Detroit," the third triplet added. The directness of his statement, delivered in a calm, matter-of-fact tone, sent a cold shock through Victor's body. No one had called him by that name in 25 years. He had buried Vincent Haddad so completely that not even his current executive assistant knew he had ever existed. Yet these children, these 3 children with his eyes, had just spoken his birth name aloud in a room full of reporters and cameras. Victor's training in crisis management kicked in. "I think you're confused," he said with just the right blend of amusement and dismissal. "Let's continue the tour, shall we?" he added to Catherine, smoothly moving away from the triplets. But as he proceeded through the remainder of the event, Victor's legendary focus was shattered. From the corner of his eye, he could see the triplets watching him, 3 identical expressions of certainty on their young faces. And for the first time in decades, Victor Harrington felt something he had worked tirelessly to eliminate from his life: fear. The moment the official program concluded, Victor pulled Catherine aside. "Those 3 children, the triplets. What? Can you tell me about them?" Catherine looked surprised by his interest. "The Haddad triplets. They came to us about 6 months ago when their former foster placement didn't work out. They're quite remarkable children, excellent students, though they can be challenging at times." "Haddad?" Victor repeated, the Arabic surname he had abandoned reverberating like an accusation. "Yes, that's their family name. Is there something specific you wanted to know about them?" "Who is their caseworker?" Victor asked, ignoring her question. "That would be Isabel Chen. She's one of our best. Is there a problem, Mr. Harrington?" "Not at all," Victor assured her with the practiced smile that had closed billion-dollar deals. "My foundation is considering a special scholarship program, and those 3 seem like they might be good candidates. I'd like to speak with Ms. Chen about their academic background." It was a plausible lie, delivered with the conviction that had made Victor Harrington a legendary businessman. Catherine provided Isabel Chen's contact information without further questions. As Victor's car pulled away from Hope Haven, his carefully ordered world felt suddenly precarious. He had built Victor Harrington from nothing, crafting every detail of his background and persona to project success and confidence. The existence of 3 children who apparently knew his original identity and who shared his distinctive features threatened everything he had spent decades building. In the privacy of his car, Victor made a call to Jackson Reynolds, his head of security and the one person who knew fragments of his true background. "I need everything you can find on 3 children," he said without preamble. "Triplets named Zara, Zain, and Zachariah Haddad, currently at Hope Haven Children's Center, and I need it immediately." "The Haddad name specifically caught your attention?" Jackson asked carefully. As a former intelligence officer, Jackson had helped Victor bury certain aspects of his past when he joined Pinnacle Investments 15 years ago. "Yes," Victor confirmed, "and I need to know who their mother was. Understood. I'll have preliminary information for you within the hour." As the car navigated through Boston traffic toward his office, Victor stared out the window without seeing the familiar landmarks. Instead, his mind was 25 years and 600 miles away in a small Detroit apartment where a young man named Vincent Haddad had said goodbye to a woman named Amira before his world had gone up in flames. Isabel Chen was not impressed by wealth or power, a quality that had served her well during her 8 years as a social worker. She had faced down aggressive parents, intimidating judges, and bureaucratic administrators, always with the same steady determination to do what was best for her young clients. So when Victor Harrington's private number appeared on her cell phone the morning after his visit to Hope Haven, she answered with professional courtesy, but not the deference most people showed the billionaire. "Mr. Harrington," she greeted him after he identified himself. "How can I help you?" "I'd like to discuss the Haddad triplets," Victor said, his tone businesslike. "Would you be available to meet today?" "May I ask why you're interested in these specific children?" Isabel's protective instincts were immediately activated. In her experience, wealthy people suddenly taking interest in particular foster children rarely had purely altruistic motives. "My foundation is considering them for a special opportunity," Victor replied, with the same explanation he had given Catherine. "I'd prefer to discuss the details in person. The triplets have experienced significant instability in their young lives, Mr. Harrington. I need to understand exactly what kind of opportunity you're proposing before I agree to any meeting." There was a pause on the other end of the line, as if Victor was not accustomed to having his requests questioned. "Ms. Chen, I can appreciate your caution, but I assure you, my interest is legitimate. Perhaps we could meet at your office this afternoon?" Something in his tone, an uncharacteristic note of uncertainty beneath the confident exterior, made Isabel agree to the meeting, though her skepticism remained intact. At precisely 2 p.m., Victor Harrington arrived at the modest government building that housed the Department of Children and Family Services. He looked distinctly out of place in the worn waiting room, with its outdated magazines and institutional beige walls, his bespoke suit and Italian leather briefcase creating a stark contrast to the surroundings. Isabel led him to a small conference, a room that offered more privacy than her cubicle. "Now, Mr. Harrington," she began once they were seated, "why don't you tell me the real reason you're interested in the Haddad triplets?" Victor assessed the woman across from him. Isabel Chen appeared to be in her mid-30s, with an intelligent gaze behind simple glasses and a practical bob haircut. Her no-nonsense blazer and sensible shoes suggested someone who valued function over fashion, and her direct approach indicated she wouldn't be easily misled. "They called me Vincent Haddad yesterday," he said finally, deciding that a partial truth might be necessary. "A name from my past that they should have no way of knowing." Isabel's expression revealed nothing. "And is that your name? Vincent Haddad?" It was. Many years ago, Victor rarely admitted even this much about his former identity. "I legally changed it when I moved to the East Coast and began my business career." "I see." Isabel made a small note on her pad. "And what is your connection to these children, Mr. Harrington? Or should I call you Mr. Haddad?" Harrington is my legal name, Victor said firmly, and I don't know what my connection to the children might be. That's why I'm here. I need information about their background, their parentage. Isabel studied him for a moment. I'm sure you understand that I can't simply share confidential information about minors in state custody. There are laws and protocols designed to protect their privacy. Of course, Victor agreed smoothly. But surely there are circumstances where exceptions can be made. For instance, if there were a potential family connection. Are you claiming to be related to the Triplets, Mr. Harrington? It was the direct question Victor had been avoiding, even in his own thoughts. The Triplets' amber eyes, his eyes, flashed in his memory. It's a possibility I need to explore, he admitted reluctantly. Isabel leaned forward slightly. The Triplets have been in the system for 3 years, Mr. Harrington. If you're suggesting you might be a relative, I have to wonder why you're only appearing now. I didn't know they existed until yesterday, Victor said, a rare moment of complete honesty. Their mother and I lost contact many years ago. Their mother's name was Amira Haddad, Isabel said, watching Victor's reaction carefully. Does that name mean anything to you? Victor's carefully maintained composure faltered visibly. Amira, but her last name wasn't Haddad when I knew her. She married a man named Karim Haddad, approximately a year after the Triplets were born, Isabel explained. He adopted the children legally, giving them his surname. When both Amira and Karim died in a car accident 3 years ago, the children entered foster care. Victor absorbed this information, his mind working rapidly to calculate timelines. When exactly were the Triplets born? August 17, 2011. Victor did the mental arithmetic instantly. 12 years ago. Approximately 9 months after his last night in Detroit, when he had said goodbye to Amira Nassar before fleeing the city and his identity. I need to see them again, he said, his usual commanding tone returning. To speak with them privately. That's not how this works, Mr. Harrington. If you're claiming potential paternity, there are legal procedures to follow. DNA testing, court petitions, home studies. I understand bureaucracy, Ms. Chen. I also understand that such processes can be expedited when necessary. It wasn't quite a threat, but the implication was clear. Victor Harrington had the connections and resources to navigate systems that would stymie ordinary citizens. Isabel, however, remained unintimidated. These children have experienced profound loss and multiple disruptions, Mr. Harrington. Whatever your agenda might be, their welfare remains my primary concern. And it should be, Victor agreed, shifting tactics, which is why I'm proposing a controlled, supervised meeting. You would be present the entire time. My only goal is to understand how they recognized me and what they know about their potential connection to me. After further discussion, Isabel reluctantly agreed to arrange a meeting at Hope Haven the following day, with strict parameters about duration and topics. As Victor left the government building, he felt an unfamiliar sense of being outmaneuvered, a rare experience for someone accustomed to controlling every interaction. Back in his penthouse that evening, Victor reviewed the information Jackson Reynolds had compiled on the Triplets and their mother. The dossier confirmed what Isabel had shared, with additional details about Amira's life after Vincent Haddad had disappeared from Detroit. According to the report, Amira had never filed a missing persons report when Vincent vanished. Instead, she had continued her studies, eventually becoming a high school math teacher. She had married Karim Haddad when the Triplets were 13 months old, and by all accounts, they had been a happy, stable family until the car accident that claimed both parents' lives when the children were 9. What the report didn't explain was how the Triplets knew about Vincent Haddad. If Karim had adopted them as infants, and if Amira had never reported Vincent missing, how did 3 12-year-olds recognize him on sight and know his birth name? The question preoccupied Victor as he stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over Boston Harbor. For 25 years, he had lived as Victor Harrington, systematically erasing every trace of Vincent Haddad. He had created a new personal history: prep school in Connecticut, undergraduate degree from Princeton, MBA from Harvard, all supported by impeccably forged documentation and strategic gaps that most people filled in with assumptions about privileged upbringings. The truth: that Vincent Haddad had been a scholarship student at Michigan State, whose parents had died in a suspicious fire that insurance investigators had hinted might be arson, was known to no one. Or so he had believed until yesterday, when 3 children with his eyes had spoken his birth name aloud. Victor's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was Jackson. "I've found something else," his security chief said without preamble. Amira Haddad kept a journal. After her death, it was given to the Triplets as part of their personal effects. According to my source at the Social Services Department, the journal contained extensive entries about a man named Vincent Haddad, the children's biological father. Victor's grip on the phone tightened. What exactly did these entries say? I don't have that level of detail yet, but apparently Amira was quite thorough in documenting her life. When the Triplets entered foster care, the journal was considered an important connection to their birth parents. It's been with them through each placement. Victor processed this new information, understanding now how the children had recognized him. Their mother had preserved his memory, had told them about their biological father, a man they had never met, but whose features they saw in their own mirrors daily. "I need to see that journal," Victor said. "That might be difficult," Jackson cautioned. "It's considered the children's personal property. Legally accessing it would require their permission or a court order." The supervised meeting with the Triplets had become even more crucial. Victor needed to understand exactly what Amira had written about him, about their brief relationship, and, most concerning, about his hasty departure from Detroit following the fire. "Continue digging," Victor instructed, "particularly around the circumstances of Amira's marriage to Karim Haddad. I want to know everything about the man who raised those children." After ending the call, Victor found himself doing something unusual, looking at old photographs. Hidden in an encrypted file on a secure server were the only images of Vincent Haddad that Victor had kept. Photos of his parents in front of their small grocery store. A graduation picture from Michigan State. And one image of Vincent with Amira taken months before everything had changed. In the photo, they were laughing. 2 ambitious students with plans for the future. Vincent's arm was around Amira's shoulders, her dark hair blowing in the wind, both unaware of how dramatically their paths would diverge. Victor studied Amira's face, searching for traces of the Triplets in her features. The children had his eyes, his cheekbones, but their smiles, the brief glimpses he had seen during the event, those belonged to Amira. For the first time in decades, Victor allowed himself to remember the night he had left Detroit. The frantic phone call about the fire at his parents' store. Arriving to find the building engulfed in flames, his parents still inside. The whispered accusations from neighbors about insurance fraud gone wrong. The police officers with their suspicious questions about the store's financial troubles. He had gone to Amira that night, shell-shocked and desperate. She had offered to go with him, to help him fight the accusations, but Vincent had refused. His parents were dead, their reputation tarnished by rumors of fraud, and he saw no future for himself in Detroit. By morning, he was gone, carrying a new identity and leaving Vincent Haddad, and apparently an unborn legacy, behind. Now, 25 years later, that legacy had found him in the form of 3 12-year-olds with his eyes and their mother's smile. As Victor prepared for the meeting the following day, he reminded himself of his initial objective: damage control. He needed to understand what the triplets knew, assess the potential threat to his carefully constructed identity, and determine a course of action that would protect the life and reputation he had built. Yet, as he selected his least intimidating suit, still impeccably tailored but in navy rather than his usual power colors, Victor acknowledged a secondary motivation emerging beneath the strategic concerns. A curiosity about these children who carried his blood, who knew his name despite having never met him, who had somehow found him despite the elaborate barriers he had erected between Victor Harrington and Vincent Haddad. The small conference room at Hope Haven Children's Center had been arranged for the meeting, with comfortable chairs and a table stocked with snacks that the triplets had apparently not touched. When Victor entered, flanked by Isabel Chen, the three children were already seated on one side of the table, presenting a united front. Mr. Harrington, these are Zara, Zain, and Zachariah Haddad, Isabel introduced formally, though the introduction was clearly unnecessary. Children, this is Mr. Victor Harrington. We know who he is, Zara said, her direct gaze, so similar to Victor's own, fixed on his face. Victor took the seat across from them, conscious that this was perhaps the most important negotiation of his life, yet one for which he had no practiced strategy. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," he began, using the polite but authoritative tone that had served him well in countless business situations. "We've been waiting for you to find us," Zain said matter-of-factly. He was the smallest of the triplets, with wire-rimmed glasses that magnified his amber eyes. Though Mom said, "You probably never would." The casual reference to Amira as Mom created an unexpected tightness in Victor's chest. These children had memories of her, experiences with her that he would never know. "I didn't know about you," Victor said, deciding that honesty might be the best approach, at least initially, "until I saw you at the event yesterday. But you recognized us," Zachariah observed. Of the three, he projected the most skepticism, his posture slightly defensive. "Just like we recognized you." "Yes," Victor admitted. "The resemblance is striking." "We have your eyes," Zara stated. "Everyone always said so, even when we were babies." Victor glanced at Isabel, who was observing the interaction carefully from a chair positioned between the two parties. "I understand your mother kept a journal," he said, returning his attention to the triplets, "and that she wrote about me in it." The three exchanged glances in that silent communication that identical triplets often develop. After a moment, Zara, clearly the leader, nodded slightly. "She wrote about Vincent Haddad," she confirmed. "About how they met at Michigan State, about how much they loved each other, about how devastated she was when he disappeared after his parents died." Victor maintained his composed expression, though the phrase "loved each other" created another, unexpected twist of emotion. His brief relationship with Amira had been serious, but not in his memory, the great romance her journal apparently described. "She also wrote about finding out she was pregnant after you were gone," Zain added, pushing his glasses up with one finger. "She tried to find you, but it was like you had vanished completely." "I changed my name," Victor acknowledged, and moved east. "Why?" Zachariah asked, the direct question hanging in the air between them. It was the question Victor had prepared for least, the one that touched on the most carefully buried parts of his past. "It's complicated," he hedged. "There were circumstances around my parents' deaths that made staying in Detroit difficult." "You mean the fire?" Zain asked. "Mom wrote about that too. How the grocery store burned down with your parents inside. How the police thought it might have been set intentionally." Victor felt a cold shock at hearing these details, spoken so matter-of-factly by a 12-year-old. "What exactly did your mother write about that?" he asked carefully. "That you were devastated," Zara answered, studying his reaction. "That the police suspected you might have been involved because the store had financial problems. but that she never believed you could do something like that. Victor exhaled slowly, processing the knowledge that Amira had documented these details, his parents' deaths, the suspicions that had driven him from Detroit, and passed them on to these children who now sat watching him with identical, analytical expressions. "Your mother was correct," he said finally. "I had nothing to do with the fire. But at the time, with my parents gone and suspicion falling on me, I made a decision to start over somewhere else." As Victor Harrington, Zachariah completed. "Yes. Did you know about us?" Zara asked, the question direct but her tone softer than her brother's. "Did you know Mom was pregnant when you left?" "No," Victor said firmly, meeting her gaze. "I had no idea. If I had known..." He trailed off, unsure how to complete that sentence truthfully. If he had known Amira was pregnant, would it have changed his decision to leave Detroit, to reinvent himself completely? He wasn't certain, and these perceptive children would detect a lie. "We have a DNA test," Zane stated, changing the subject. Abruptly, "Mom saved some of your things, a comb, a toothbrush. When we were 10, we asked our social worker to help us get a test done to confirm you were our biological father. It was a 99.98% match." Victor hadn't expected this revelation. The children had known with scientific certainty of their connection to him for 2 years, yet had never attempted to contact him. "Why didn't you try to find me sooner?" he asked. "Once you had confirmation?" "Mom made us promise," Zara explained. In her journal, she wrote that we shouldn't seek you out, that you had chosen a different life, and we should respect that choice. She said if fate ever brought us together, we would recognize each other immediately. And we did, Zachariah added, yesterday, though fate had some help from the Hope Haven publicity department. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Victor found himself impressed by the boy's dry wit, another trait that felt eerily familiar. "What happens now?" Zane asked, the practical question cutting through the emotional undercurrents. It was what Victor had been asking himself since the moment he had looked into 3 pairs of eyes so similar to his own. His carefully constructed life as Victor Harrington had no space designed for children, especially children who knew him as Vincent Haddad and whose existence connected him irrevocably to a past he had spent decades burying. "That depends partly on what you want," Victor said carefully, "and on what's best for all concerned." "We want to know our father," Zara stated simply. "We've been waiting our whole lives to meet you." The directness of her statement, delivered without drama or manipulation, hit Victor with unexpected force. These children, his children, had grown up with the knowledge of him, with stories and a journal that had preserved a version of Vincent Haddad that even he barely remembered. "It's more complicated than that," Isabel interjected gently, speaking. "For the first time since the introductions, Mr. Harrington has his established life, and you 3 have been through significant transitions already. Any changes would need to consider your stability and well-being first and foremost. We're being adopted," Zachariah announced. "Dr. Rodriguez and her husband have already started the paperwork. We've been with them for 6 months, and they want to make it permanent." This new information shifted Victor's understanding of the situation again. "You have a potential adoptive placement?" he asked, looking to Isabel for confirmation. She nodded. "The Rodriguez family has been fostering the triplets since January. They've expressed interest in adoption, and the initial assessments have been positive. It's a promising situation. Stable home, committed parents, resources to support. 3 active children. They're nice," Zane offered. "Dr. Rodriguez is a pediatrician, and Mr. Rodriguez teaches high school science. They have a house with a yard and a dog named Einstein." Victor absorbed this, recognizing that contrary to his initial fears, the triplets weren't looking to disrupt his life or make claims on his resources. They had a potentially permanent home on the horizon. They simply wanted to know him, to connect the stories from their mother's journal with the man sitting across from them. Would it be possible for me to speak with Dr. Rodriguez and her husband? Victor asked Isabel, to discuss potential involvement going forward. I can arrange that, Isabel agreed, looking somewhat surprised by this constructive approach. As the meeting concluded, Zara reached into her backpack and removed a well-worn leather journal. "This is Mom's journal," she said, placing it on the table. "We've read it so many times we practically have it memorized. We thought you might want to read it too." Victor stared at the journal, understanding the significance of what was being offered, a window into Amira's life, her thoughts about him, her experiences raising his children without him. "We'd need it back," Zachariah added quickly. "It's the only one we have." "I would take very good care of it," Victor promised, accepting the journal with careful hands. As the triplets prepared to leave with Isabel, Zara turned back. "You know, you don't have to keep being Victor Harrington with us," she said. "We already know who you really are." The simple statement followed Victor back to his car, where he sat holding Amira's journal, contemplating the unprecedented proposition the girl had offered, the freedom to be Vincent Haddad again, at least in some limited context. For 25 years, he had lived as Victor Harrington, burying his former identity so completely that he sometimes went months without even thinking the name Vincent Haddad. Now, 3 12-year-olds were offering him the opportunity to reclaim that name, that self, without judgment or expectation. It was terrifying. It was liberating. And as Victor opened the first page of Amira's journal, beginning the journey back into a past he had systematically erased, he wasn't entirely sure which emotion would ultimately prevail. The Rodriguez family home was exactly as Zane had described it, a comfortable suburban house with a well-kept yard, located in a neighborhood of similar homes about 30 minutes outside Boston. Victor had driven himself rather than using his usual car service, another small step in the gradual dismantling of the barriers between Victor Harrington and the situation he now faced. Dr. Elena Rodriguez greeted him at the door with professional courtesy, tinged with obvious protective instinct toward the triplets. Her husband Daniel joined them in the living room, where evidence of the children's presence was visible in books stacked neatly on side tables and a complex board game paused mid-play on a coffee table. "The children are at their weekly therapy session," Elena explained as they settled in the comfortably furnished room. "We thought it would be better to meet privately first." "I appreciate your willingness to see me," Victor said. In the 2 weeks since his initial meeting with the triplets, he had read Amira's journal twice, met with the children 3 more times under Isabel's supervision, and engaged in more personal reflection than he had allowed himself in decades. "The triplets have talked about little else since they met you," Daniel said frankly. "We want to understand your intentions before this goes any further." It was a fair question, one that Victor had been asking himself continuously. His initial instinct to manage the situation as a potential threat to his carefully constructed identity had evolved significantly after reading Amira's journal and spending time with the children. The journal had revealed a woman of remarkable resilience and compassion. Amira had documented her grief at Vincent's disappearance, her shock at discovering her pregnancy, and her eventual decision to build a life without him. She had written about telling the triplets about their biological father, not with bitterness or anger, but with honesty, and even a kind of forgiveness that Vincent hadn't believed he deserved. Most surprisingly, the journal revealed that Amira had eventually discovered what had become of him. 3 years after the triplets' birth, she had recognized Victor Harrington in a business magazine, the eyes that her children had inherited, making him unmistakable to her despite his transformation. Yet she had chosen not to contact him, writing that he had clearly created a new life for himself, one that perhaps had no room for the complications of a past he had decisively left behind. "I'm still determining my intentions," Victor admitted to the Rodriguezes. "This situation is unprecedented in my experience." "You're their biological father," Eleanor stated plainly. "But Daniel and I have been working to become their legal parents. We need to understand how you see your role in their lives going forward." Victor appreciated their directness. "I have no intention of disrupting your adoption plans," he assured them. "The triplets speak very highly of you both, and it's clear you're providing the stable home they need." Relief visibly crossed both their faces, though Daniel remained cautious. "Then what exactly are you proposing?" "A relationship," Victor said, the word still feeling foreign on his tongue when applied to personal rather than business contexts. "Some form of ongoing connection with the triplets. The specifics would need to be worked out among all parties, with their best interests as the priority." Eleanor studied him thoughtfully. "This is quite a change from the Victor Harrington portrayed in the business press. You're known for being rather solitary." It was an accurate observation. Victor had cultivated that image deliberately, keeping romantic relationships brief and superficial, avoiding entanglements that might require him to reveal more of himself than the carefully crafted persona he presented to the world. "Recent events have prompted some re-evaluation," Victor acknowledged. Their conversation continued for over an hour, discussing practical considerations, boundaries, and how any relationship between Victor and the triplets would coordinate with the Rodriguez's parental authority. By the time they heard the children arriving home with their therapy provider, they had reached a tentative understanding. The triplets entered the living room cautiously, clearly having been informed of Victor's visit, but uncertain about its purpose. Seeing all three together still created a jolt of recognition for Victor, these children with his eyes, his features, yet with expressions and mannerisms all their own. "We've been talking with Mr. Harrington about his role in your lives going forward," Elena explained gently. "He's suggested a kind of extended family arrangement, where you would continue living with us, but would have regular contact with him as well." "Like weekend visits?" Zara asked, ever the practical one. "Among other things," Victor confirmed, "if that would be acceptable to all of you." "Would we come to your penthouse?" Zane asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "The one in the magazine articles?" "Sometimes, perhaps," Victor agreed. "Though I've been considering a property with more outdoor space. Something more suitable for visits." From 3 active children, the implication that he was already making adjustments to his life to accommodate them was not lost on anyone in the room. The triplets exchanged one of their silent communications before Zachariah spoke up. "What should we call you?" he asked. "Mr. Harrington seems weird if you're our biological father, but Dad doesn't seem right either, since we're just getting to know you." It was a perceptive question that cut to the heart of the complex identities at play. Victor considered it carefully. "You could call me Vincent if you'd like," he offered, surprising himself with the suggestion, "at least when we're in private settings." The triplets' faces lit up at this concession, this acknowledgement of the connection between them and the man their mother had written about in her journal. Over the following months, a new pattern emerged in Victor's precisely ordered life. While maintaining his leadership of Pinnacle Investments, he carved out regular time for the triplets, Saturday activities, occasional weeknight dinners, video calls when business took him out of town. He purchased a weekend house on the Massachusetts coast, with separate bedrooms for each child and space for outdoor exploration. The Rodriguez adoption proceeded as planned, with Victor's full support and even his testimony to the family court about the positive environment they provided. He established education trusts for each child, but otherwise deferred to Elena and Daniel on day-to-day parenting decisions. For the triplets, having both their adoptive family and their biological father involved in their lives seemed to provide a sense of completeness, a connection to their past through Victor and security for their future through the Rodriguezes. For Victor, the changes were more profound. For 25 years, he had lived as Victor Harrington, a man with no past before his emergence as a business prodigy on the East Coast. Now, in limited but significant contexts, he was allowing aspects of Vincent Haddad to resurface. It began with small things, sharing stories with the triplets about his parents' grocery store, showing them photographs of their grandmother's prized roses, teaching them phrases in the Lebanese Arabic he had spoken at home as a child. Each disclosure, each memory reclaimed from the past he had buried, felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating. 6 months after his first meeting with the triplets, Victor faced his most significant challenge yet. The Rodriguez family had invited him to attend a cultural heritage event at the children's school, where students and their families would celebrate their diverse backgrounds. The triplets wanted to include both their Lebanese heritage through Victor and their adopted connection to the Rodriguez family's Puerto Rican traditions. The public acknowledgement of his ethnic background, something Victor Harrington had concealed for decades, represented a fundamental shift in the barriers he had erected between his past and present identities. After considerable internal debate, he agreed to attend. The event was unlike anything in Victor's usual social calendar, a school gymnasium filled with families of various backgrounds, tables displaying cultural artifacts and traditional foods, children proudly introducing relatives to their friends and teachers. Victor arrived in carefully selected attire, his usual impeccable tailoring, but with subtle references to his heritage in the styling. He had brought items from his parents' store that he had kept hidden for 25 years. His mother's hand-embroidered tablecloth, his father's traditional coffee pot, photographs of the Haddad family in happier times. "You came," Zara said, spotting him immediately as he entered the gymnasium. She hurried over, followed closely by her brothers. "And you brought the things you told us about." "I said I would," Victor replied, allowing her to take the box from his arms. The triplets led him to their display table, where they had already arranged items representing the Rodriguez family heritage. Together, they set up the Lebanese artifacts, with the children asking questions about each item's significance and history. As families circulated through the exhibits, Victor found himself explaining traditional Lebanese coffee preparation to curious parents and children, sharing stories about his mother's embroidery techniques and answering questions about his family's journey to America, all subjects that Victor Harrington would have deflected or avoided entirely just months earlier. "This is quite a change for you," observed Isabel Chen, who was attending the event as a guest of the Rodriguez family. "The business press would barely recognize Victor Harrington right now." Victor considered her comment as he watched the triplets proudly showing other students the photographs of their Lebanese great-grandparents. "Perhaps Victor Harrington and Vincent Haddad aren't as incompatible as I once believed," he said. "Integration rather than compartmentalization." Isabel suggested, her social worker's perspective as insightful as ever. "Something like that," Victor agreed. "Those certain aspects of my public persona will remain necessary for business purposes." The truth, which he was only beginning to acknowledge to himself, was that the rigid separation he had maintained between Vincent Haddad and Victor Harrington had exacted a personal cost he hadn't fully recognized until now. The carefully constructed walls that had protected his reinvented identity had also isolated him, preventing authentic connections even as they facilitated his professional success. The triplets had inadvertently offered him a third option, not the complete burial of Vincent Haddad, nor the abandonment of Victor Harrington, but a careful integration of the two identities in appropriate contexts. As the evening concluded, Elena Rodriguez captured a photograph of Victor with the triplets beside their heritage display. In the image, the family resemblance was unmistakable. 4 pairs of amber eyes, the same distinctive facial features, even similar expressions as they looked toward the camera. Later, in a rare impulsive gesture, Victor placed this photograph on his desk at Pinnacle Investments, a small but significant acknowledgement of the connection between the public titan of industry and the 3 children who had recognized him across a crowded room and called him by a name he had abandoned decades ago. The questions about the photograph from business associates were inevitably coming, as were the potential implications for his carefully managed public narrative. But as Victor looked at those 3 young faces so similar to his own, he found himself less concerned with controlling every aspect of his image than he had been for 25 years. Some secrets he was discovering became less dangerous when selectively shared rather than obsessively hidden, and some identities were strengthened, not weakened, by acknowledging their complexity rather than enforcing their isolation. Vincent Haddad would never fully replace Victor Harrington in the boardrooms and financial circles where the latter had built his empire. But in the weekend house by the sea, in the conversations with 3 curious 12-year-olds hungry for connection to their origins, in the gradually expanding spaces where authentic history replaced carefully constructed fiction, Vincent was, cautiously, tentatively, re-emerging, not as a threat to the present, but as a vital foundation for whatever future might now be possible. End. Millionaire's secret past, revealed by triplets in a shelter. Did this story move you? I'd truly love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what part touched you the most. Also, where in the world are you watching from? It's incredible to see how far these stories reach. And I always enjoy connecting with viewers from around the globe. Drop your city, country, or even just a flag emoji in the comments. Let's build a community connected by powerful storytelling.